cleaned up. One of the things that resulted from our statewide snowstorm yesterday is that both the Internal Revenue Service and the State Tax Department are giving a dispensation to folks who cannot file their tax returns on time. As you know, it's April 15th, and at midnight you turn into a pumpkin unless you have filed your tax returns and you do not have a extension. And one of the things that is the kind of the blessings, I guess, of the snowstorm is that you have a bit more time to file your tax returns without penalty. On the phone in the next half hour of the Legislature Today program, we have our North Dakota Tax Commissioner, Corey Fong. He's a Republican. He was appointed as tax commissioner by Governor John Hoeven and subsequently elected to the job. Welcome, Mr. Fong.
Yes, thanks so much, Dale. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. It's been kind of a crazy day.
Yeah, tell us how you got to work today.
Well, I didn't drive my own vehicle. I got picked up by a friend who was able to get out from his home and was working at the Capitol, and he came and picked me up at the top of my street that I live on because it's not a snow route. But he was able to pick me up and took me to the office, and I've been here ever since. And so I still don't have a vehicle, so I haven't figured out quite how I'm going to get home tonight. But
give me a call. I can give you a ride.
I might have to do that. No, it's been a busy day, as you know, because you were up at the Capitol today and caught me just as we were trying to issue our statement about what this meant for taxpayers. And so it's been kind of go ever since I got to the office.
And one of the reasons you're at the office, in fact, probably the biggest reason, is that it is the deadline tonight. And how late is the Capitol open for folks who are late filers, last-minute filers?
Well, we have extended our hours like we've done in the past to 9 o'clock, and so we've had quite a few folks coming in tonight asking questions and dropping off their returns. We've got folks who are manning the phones and actually helping taxpayers make their final preparation on their returns, and so it's been actually, I think, a very productive evening for us to be able to help taxpayers, and many of them have had questions about the impacts from the snow today, because there are taxpayers out there that are not going to be able to meet today's deadline. In some cases, it's probably an excuse to procrastinate just a bit longer, but some taxpayers actually have a legitimate reason today because they're not going to be able to make the deadline.
How many returns have been filed so far?
So far, and our numbers are going to be a little bit behind because of kind of a skeleton crew here today. But through last week, we had about 280,000 returns that have been filed. And just to give you a sense of what we expect during the normal filing season, Dale, we expect to get about 380,000 returns. So we will probably get another 100,000 returns between now and the end of the week as the mail trickles in, and that kind of becomes the normal filing season. But by the time the extension deadline rolls around, October 15th, we'll probably see a total of about 410 or 415,000 returns total. So we've got a lot of returns left to come in. A lot of those will be electronically filed. Matter of fact, we did, I'm sure, receive lots of electronically filed returns today. We did get some mail, even though there were parts of the state where mail service was interrupted. But it's going to be a busy week for us, and obviously for the staff who are in our processing center.
Folks who file electronically, I mean, do they really need a extension? Because, it's not as if they have to struggle out to the post office to put it in the mail.
Well, that's a good point, and I think it actually points to the fact that e-file really is the best way to go, because if you find yourself in this situation at the last minute, a lot of the e-file filers could have met the deadline today easily. Some folks, though, because of their return, because of the complications, they probably need to file for an extension. There are methods to file for an extension electronically. And so, but it's a good point. I mean, a lot of taxpayers who file electronically don't necessarily need that extension. But again, we want to be fair and treat them all the same.
How much have you paid out so far in refunds, and what's the average refund?
So far, Dale, this filing season, we've paid out a total number of 174,000 refunds, totaling about $38 million. And the average refund right now is about $218. I suspect that'll go up slightly by the time we process the returns by the end of this week. It's slightly down from last year at this time. The average refund last year at this time was about $270, so we're slightly down. And I think part of that has to do with folks who probably found themselves under withheld, folks who, because of the changes in the tax rates and the withholding charts, may have found themselves to be under withheld. But we've issued a lot of refunds, and we will continue to until the end here. One of the services that we like to promote is called Dude, Where's My Refund? And so people can go onto our website, and with just a little bit of information from their return, they can find out the status of their return, whether it's been received, and if the refund has been issued.
Do you have any idea what the largest refund is that you've paid out so far?
Dale, I do not have that. I do not have that information.
That's okay. I was interested in as well, and you can use your tax return to make contributions to, like, I think it's a wildlife fund or something of that nature. Do you have any idea how popular that has been?
Well, those are not stats that I keep on a regular basis, but obviously the various programs, they do get some interest. I would say it's probably not something that a lot of people are taking advantage of, but there are a few out there that benefit from or like to participate in the program. But I would say that it's probably fairly minimal.
One of the things that the legislature has been debating at length is whether to reduce North Dakota's income tax, and if so, by how much. How difficult is it for you to run the numbers on a income tax proposal when someone comes up with one? Because there have been several, and just how does that process work? I mean, someone comes in and says, I want to cut income taxes by X percent, and you kind of have to figure out how that translates into state law.
Dale, and we talked about this the first time I was on the program earlier in the session. Those proposals are actually fairly easy for us to run if it's just simple rate reduction. And that's primarily the major tax proposals, or individual income tax and corporate income tax proposals are rate relief. Those proposals are not difficult. It depends, too, on the method. There have been some across-the-board proposals, and I believe that's kind of where the Senate is right now on their proposal. There have been proposals that have, tried to keep the progressivity of our tax system. In other words, a little bit more at the bottom end, or the bottom wage earners versus at the top. And those can be a little bit more challenging to run those numbers. But for the most part, rate relief proposals are relatively easy for us to calculate and get those numbers back to the legislature.
Go ahead.
What's more difficult for us is probably the effects of individual tax credits or deductions, because sometimes it's not possible for us to get the information from the various sources to run those numbers, and so sometimes we have to put a fiscal note on a bill that's cannot compute or cannot determine. But that's something that we deal with every single legislative session, is the challenges associated with those kinds of bills. But rate relief itself, basic proposals, they're actually relatively easy.
One of the things that we've seen come back recently that we saw about 6 years ago is the idea of having an income tax credit, a credit on one's income tax that is linked to how much property tax that person pays. Now, this was approved in the 2007 session. It was done for 2 years, and then it was abandoned in favor of another way of providing folks with a break on their property taxes. Now this idea of giving people an income tax credit on their property tax is back. And can you tell us the first time that came around, what was that like? I mean, do you think that that's a wise public policy idea to revisit right now?
Well, that was the 2007 session, Dale, and that was the session where in the 11th hour they passed this proposal that was, again, a property tax credit. It was based on the property taxes paid. Married joint filers could receive up to $1,000, 10% up to $1,000 on their return, and single filers could receive up to $500 on their return. It was complicated for a variety of reasons. Taxpayers who didn't have a filing requirement but may have owned property, a home, for example, were forced in that case in order to receive the credit to actually have to file a return even though they didn't have a filing requirement. We had this whole concept of taxpayers who were unable to use the credit to offset liability. Instead of carrying it forward, if they wanted a certificate, that they could go down to the county treasurer and cash that certificate in for cash. And it just had a number of components to it that logistically were difficult for taxpayers, difficult for us, difficult for counties to administer. And so, I guess it's something that's coming back. It's going to be discussed probably in the next couple of weeks as the legislature wraps up. I am hopeful that they will look for another solution versus this concept because I do think it's complicated for taxpayers. The practitioners and preparers didn't like the program, and again, it was difficult for our agency and for counties to administer. And I think probably more important is that I think it's a disconnect for taxpayers that are looking for property tax relief, and here is this complicated credit that's delivered through the income tax system that's really unrelated to property taxes. And so I hope that the legislature in its closing days here will look to other solutions that will be more directly related to property tax relief and avoid getting back into this program. And we're going to remind them of that. We already have. The Senate Appropriations Committee heard the bill last week, and we told them that we didn't think it was the right solution. But we also recognize that there's a lot of time left, and there's a lot of changes that are going to occur between now and the end of session, and we're just going to have to be a part of those discussions. And hopefully they'll listen to us and take our guidance and advice, and I guess our suggestions as they try to wind the session down.
Were you surprised to see this particular gambit come back?
I was very surprised, but again, visiting with the Senate Finance and Tax Chair Dwight Cook, I think what they're looking for are just some ideas out there that they can keep some things alive, not knowing fully at this point what is going to be the dominant package, whether it's going to be all delivered through property tax savings in the school funding bill, which is the governor's proposal 1319, which buys down school district mill levies by 60 mills. If that's going to be the primary vehicle, if it's going to be fully funded, perhaps a proposal like this is not necessary. But if it's not, they might need to be looking for another program of some kind to add to the mix and deliver additional property tax relief. But I was surprised that they would go back to this because I thought, for the most part, legislators and the public and a lot of folks understood that this was not an ideal program. It was clumsy. It was again complicated for taxpayers and for us and for preparers and the counties. But again, I think it's just one of those ideas that's still alive and will be worked on more as the weeks progress.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mrs. Fong. How did you get into politics, and where are you from? Where'd you go to school? Just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, Dale, as you know, I am originally from Montana, Montana native, and my parents grew up in western North Dakota. But 1994, I had a chance to meet Secretary of State Al Jaeger when he was at a conference and had a chance to spend some time getting to know him and visit with him. And at the time, I didn't have a job. I was fresh out of college. And Secretary of State Al Jaeger and I had some discussions that followed that meeting, and I approached him about the possibility of coming to work for him, and and he hired me, and I started off in the Secretary of State's office. Shortly after that, I was made the Director of Elections for the state, working in the Secretary of State's office, and then later on went on to become Deputy Secretary of State, working for Al, and at one point I took a little bit of a hiatus, as you know, and dabbled in politics. I ran legislative races for the state Republican Party back in 2000, and then 2004 I was the campaign manager for the first Hoven re-elect for governor. And those are kind of the years when I really became involved in politics and working for the state party as well as Governor Hoven. And then following the 2004 election cycle in 2000, as we approached the 2005 session, I started working in the Commerce Department for the Hoven administration and worked the 2005 session. And it was a great session because one of the programs and one of the initiatives that we worked very closely on with the governor's office was the Centers of Excellence initiative, and I was kind of the point person on that from the Commerce Department. And as you know, that legislative session wrapped up, and then Tax Commissioner Rick Clayburgh left office, resigned to take another position, and the Tax Commissioner post came open. And so I put my name forward, and that's when then Governor Hoven appointed me tax commissioner in June of 2005. So it was kind of a great opportunity. I couldn't pass it up, or at least pass up the opportunity to try. And I was very fortunate enough that Governor Hoven then appointed me. So it's been since then that I've been tax commissioner, as you pointed out in my introduction. I was appointed and then was reelected in 2006, and then again in 2010. So it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and it's been a tremendous experience.
So you mentioned you're fresh out of college. Which college did you go to, and how well did they do in the NCAA men's basketball tournament?
Well, unfortunately, Dale, I did go to Gonzaga University, and they didn't do as well as we'd hoped in the NCAA. They were expected to go much further as far as the Final Four, but unfortunately they got unseated by Wichita State in the second round. It was very disappointing for many of us, but and we talked about this. I think they were better off when they were truly a Cinderella team, and were kind of in the position that Wichita State was in. I think that's when they were fresher and they didn't have all that pressure on them. So it was disappointing this season to watch them have such a productive and really remarkable season, and then come to that kind of an end. But and you and I've talked about this over the years because you're a big Kansas fan, if I recall.
It's true.
And they've had a number of years where they've gone through the tournament and been very successful too. So it was disappointing, I have to admit, and I wish it would have turned out differently. I was hoping that they would at least make it to the Elite Eight. I thought that would be a good showing for them. That's the furthest they've gotten, by the way. They went all the way to the Elite Eight the year that the University of Connecticut, the UConn, won the national championship. I can't remember what year that was, but it's been several years ago.
You mentioned that you were reelected in 2010. You're up for election next year. Do you intend to seek reelection?
I'm making plans and intend to seek reelection, and that's coming up faster than we all expect. The election season is just around the corner, and of course, as soon as the legislative session ends, there will be, obviously more focus on kind of taking a breather, I think, for a while, but that's going to get started very soon this fall and into next spring as district conventions start. But yes, I do intend to seek another term.
What do you like about being tax commissioner? What's appealing about it?
Well, every day seems to be different. Today is a perfect example of just the diversity of the issues. We've been so focused on the legislative session for the last several weeks. That's pretty much been our primary focus, even though the tax season is a busy time for us. And we get to today, and it's the complete opposite. The legislature was canceled. All the conference committees were canceled, and the big focus for me today was, addressing all of the challenges with taxpayers trying to get their returns filed. So every single day is a little bit different. The focus is different every single day. I really enjoy that part of the department and the work that we do. The other thing for me, Dale, is the staff. The staff is remarkable. We have really exceptional people working in the department. I've learned a lot from them. I have certainly gained from having the opportunity to work with them. And that's really up and down the office, from the top to the bottom, people who are doing the great work that they're doing today with helping us process returns and answer questions for taxpayers who are struggling to finish up their returns, but also, as you know, the day-to-day legislative questions that we get, and the experts in our individual and corporate and sales tax and oil tax areas that go down and answer very complicated questions. They are experts in their field, and to work with them has been a real privilege for me. And so that's probably the other thing that I like about my job, is just having this great opportunity to get to know all of these people and what they do. You know, we live in very historic times with what's going on in North Dakota right now with the economy and the boom. And I will think back, down the road. These years are very important to me, and I appreciate this opportunity because of this historic time. And so I feel very fortunate to have been in the department, in the tax department, as the commissioner during these years, because it has been such a historic time for the state and for what we do.
Has it been more fun since the economy is booming and tax collections are booming and we have an enormous budget surplus, and you're able to talk about these things instead of the opposite?
Well, Dale, that's a good question, because when I started in 2005, we were actually on this upward trajectory at that time, and so I don't really know what it would be like in the down cycle. So I can imagine that it would be very difficult. I talk to my counterparts in other states who obviously have very difficult situations to deal with, where they're being asked to cut staff, do more with less, and they're having to cut programs, they're having to raise taxes in other areas, and so I certainly don't envy them. That is a difficult situation to be in, and I feel fortunate that I have not had to experience that. But yeah, I assume that it's probably been it's a different experience for sure, what I've experienced, than some of my predecessors in this post, where times weren't as positive, and times were very lean. So
was the snowstorm today or yesterday fortuitous in a way, because the legislature's not in the building today when you have a tax filing deadline?
Well, I don't know if it's fortuitous or not, but it certainly made my job a little bit easier today to be able to deal with the challenges that have been posed today without having to deal with the legislative issues. But I think we got through today, and I think things will be back to normal tomorrow.
Thank you for your time. We've been speaking to Tax Commissioner Corey Fong. He's a Republican and a native of the state of Montana, an alumnus of Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. And if you haven't filed your tax returns today is the deadline for filing your tax returns, both state and federal. And if you don't have them completed and don't think you can get them done today, well, you can kind of take a breather. Because of the snowstorm, you have a time extension. Thank you for listening.
The Legislature Today is brought to you in part by Prairie Outpost Log Homes.